We are not your grandmothers and grandfathers in NAACP, and I know some chapters that's what I think of. We wanted to make this organization that already existed, that had a name, to see if we could make it work more effectively for justice in our community. Four years ago, Colin Kaepernick did a great thing. He started to take a knee. He actually started out sitting, but he started to take a knee after he was advised that may be more appropriate. He explained in detail that he was not protesting the flag, nor the national anthem. And so the question was, after he had explained it a million times, the people kept saying that he was disrespecting the flag. So the question was, did they really think? No. Nobody thought that Kaepernick was protesting the flag. Nobody thought that he was protesting the national anthem, even though the national anthem ought to be protested, because the third stanza of the national anthem, if I paraphrase a little bit, says a slave has no refuge but the grave. And the writer of what later became the national anthem was Francis Scott Key. He was a slave owner. It's kind of like me having to say Heil Hitler from the perspective of a European Jew. And by the way, one of his relatives was Roger B. Taney. And Roger B. Taney was the Supreme Court judge who in 1857 rendered the majority opinion in a landmark Supreme Court case of a black man that had gone north where slavery had been outlawed. And the Supreme Court held that since he was property, to begin with, he was still property, and that colored men or black men had no rights that white men are bound to respect. I think of that when I see that police officer Chauvin with his knee on the neck of George Floyd. It reminds me of when they do documentaries on the animals in the Serengeti, and when the wildebeest are trying to cross the Zambezi River, and the crocodiles come up and grab him around the neck and hold on until he's dead. And that's what he did the other day. He held on until he was dead. Police have been murdering and killing black folk all along. I am not a criminal, never been in jail. I've had several uncomfortable encounters with police officers. I wonder why that is. That says it happens all the time. They say, well, 99% of the police officers do a great job. There were 4 police officers there. That theory out of the window. Between 1861 and 1961, 4 to 5 black people lynched in America, 90% of them by the police. That out of the window. All police, good and bad, whatever a good police officer is, know that there are police who do bad things. They don't stop them. The prosecutors don't stop them. The mayors don't stop them. The only time they have this conversation is when we have uprisings like we're seeing out there on the streets now all across the country. So police reform, I don't know what that means. We have a culture based on the exploitation of one group and a social structure that was designed to reinforce the right of the system to exploit black folk. First of all, it's free labor. And now they've sort of transitioned from free labor to a free market to be exploited. Colin Kaepernick explained this very well. Dr. King explained it very well. Malcolm X explained it very well. The Black Panthers explained it very well. I have for the last 10 years, 30 some odd years, explained it very well as anybody. We've had black scholars from Dr. Carter G. Woodson to W.E.B. Du Bois. I could go on and on and on and on. We've all explained it. I was just looking at a documentary that everybody needs to go see. Needs to go and see. It's narrated by Samuel Jackson, and it's a documentary on Baldwin, and it's called "I'm Not Your Negro." And see, he says that I don't know if these unions are racist. I know that I'm not in them. I don't know if the government's racist. I just know that I'm not protected. I don't know if the police are racist, but I know that a whole lot of black men and women are killed unarmed by police. So the evidence says, what is the evidence that we see when we do a cursory examination of the history of the United States as far as race is concerned? Thomas Jefferson, third president of the United States, owned 200 or 300 slaves. He had 8 children by his half-black, half-white concubine, common law wife Sally Hemings. What does that mean? And he said, I shudder when I think that God is a just God of this devilish thing that we're doing he called slavery, paraphrasing again. He said, I shudder. It didn't stop him from doing it. George Washington's friend, Lafayette, the Frenchman who came to the colonists to help them against Great Britain in the Revolutionary War, wrote George Washington several times. And he said, I urge you to end this system of slavery. It would be the undoing of your nation. He said, I know you're right. I got too much money tied up into it, though. And so America has rationalized this racism. I've got a book here by Kenneth O'Reilly. It's called Nixon's Piano. And it's a book, forget the name. It has something to do with Nixon playing the piano in the White House when he was there. You know, he was a piano player. But it is a examination of how each president of the United States has treated the issue of slavery and race from George Washington all the way through Bill Clinton. And they have all punted it. Looks like Lyndon Johnson probably addressed it a little bit more succinct than most. He was a thoroughbred Southern racist. Absolutely. Now listen, let me be clear about something. I'm not angry. I actually enjoy talking about this because I know that a system of oppression will continue to those who are the victims overthrow that system. And as long as there is oppression, there would be a resistance to it. And so when people say, I was talking to a couple of white guys on line the other day, and they were saying, well, you know, you're teaching hate and angry. And I said, and you say all white people, I didn't say any of that. You have to understand that in the mind of a lot of whites and some blacks, that if you raise the issue of race, they say you're teaching hate. So the question is, do they really believe that? No. As Harry Belafonte says, those that are comfortable with oppressing, they are oppressors themselves. There are a lot of people who hide behind scripture and pious language to hide their racism. Racism meaning that you believe and accept the notion that one group should have power over the life outcomes of another group, and you're willing to enforce it even if it causes them great pain and harm. And that's what white supremacy is. It's bigger than I hate you, nigger. You know, there are a lot of people, it's like Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas, extremely intelligent man, a Harvard lawyer. But when I hear him, I know what he's talking about. When he says he's going to send in the troops, I understand. Because in the mind of the white supremacist, the only strategy to maintain peace on their terms is force and terror. And they've always done that. I expect them to do that again. I hope they don't, but I expect that. What's different about what we're seeing now, there seems to be a whole lot of young people, a lot of young whites that are involved in this movement, and they seem to have been moved spiritually, because this is a moral issue as well as a political issue. It's a moral issue. Now, what I'm shocked that 400 years black people have tolerated this, and they haven't. There have always been movements and uprisings, and what we see right now is an uprising. It doesn't have centralized leadership, and the system is looking for the centralized leaders. They need leaders out there that they can put in prison and they can call terrorists, like Black Lives Matter. Now, Black Lives Matter started kind of like a slogan. It says Black Lives Matter, essentially saying that the lives of black people have significance and importance beyond what America has defined them. And so other people immediately retorted, all lives matter. Did they really think that the Black Lives Matter people were saying that other people's lives didn't matter? No, they didn't. No, it's a competition. Whenever black people start talking about black history, when we talk about the significance of our struggle, there's another group that wants to destroy that. They won't make me believe that my experience wasn't my experience. I was born in 1953 in St. Michael's Hospital in the colored section. So my life began with being marginalized and labeled. I have a responsibility to fix that. And I can't afford to care what someone else thinks about it. But I've had some of the biggest problems in the world trying to deal with black people, particularly black preachers, that are just as prone to labeling me and people like me as bad guys. They say, you're teaching hate. You hate white folk. You must be a Muslim. You don't believe in God. And all of these are deflections. People say, do they believe in that? No, they don't believe any of that. They say that because they have a relationship with white power or white male power that they're trying to preserve, and they see or hear people like me challenging that, in my view, inappropriate relationship. We are not your grandmothers and grandfathers in NAACP, and I know some chapters that's what I think of. We wanted to make this organization that already existed, that had a name, to see if we could make it work more effectively for justice in our community.